There's a country in East Africa that ranks 83rd globally in military power, with only 24,000 active troops, smaller than Singapore's armed forces. A nation that fields aging Soviet-era tanks alongside modern Western equipment. A military that spends just $1.2 billion annually on defense, less than the cost of a single American destroyer. Yet this same country just received Israeli Spider air defense systems, American stealth helicopters, and major non-NATO ally status, making it one of only 20 nations on Earth to hold that designation. A force that spent 18 years fighting one of Africa's deadliest terrorist organizations in Somalia, and hasn't just survived, it's winning. So could this East African nation actually defend itself against a serious invasion? The answer isn't found in tank counts or defense budgets. It's found in geography, alliances, and the brutal lessons learned from nearly 2 decades of continuous combat. Welcome to the defensive reality of modern-day Kenya. Look at a map. The country is surrounded by some of the most difficult terrain in East Africa. To the north lies the vast Chalbi Desert and arid plains covering over 100,000 square kilometers, receiving less than 250 millimeters of rainfall annually. Any invasion force from Ethiopia or South Sudan would cross hundreds of miles of waterless wasteland where temperatures exceed 50 degrees Celsius. The eastern border with Somalia is dominated by the Great Rift Valley escarpments and semi-arid bushlands. The Tana River, over 1,000 kilometers long, creates a natural barrier, while the terrain consists of thick bush perfect for ambushes and asymmetric warfare. After 18 years fighting al-Shabaab in Somalia, the Kenya Defense Forces know this terrain intimately. To the west, Lake Victoria and the highlands create natural obstacles. Mount Kenya, Africa's second highest peak at 5,199 meters, and the Aberdare Range dominate the Central Highlands, where most of the population lives. These mountains funnel any invasion force into predictable routes that can be defended with limited troops. According to military geographers, roughly 60% of the country is arid or semi-arid land unsuitable for large-scale mechanized warfare. The southwestern highlands, where 95% of economic activity occurs, are accessible only through a limited number of approach routes that can be heavily defended. This isn't Egypt's Sahara or Australia's isolation, but it's difficult enough that any invasion force would face severe logistical challenges before encountering the actual military. The Kenya Defense Forces field approximately 24,000 active personnel backed by 2,500 reserves. That's tiny compared to regional rivals. Ethiopia fields 162,000 troops. Uganda operates 45,000. But numbers don't tell the full story. In December 2025, the nation received Israeli Spider surface-to-air missile systems worth $26 million. Mobile platforms capable of intercepting aircraft, helicopters, drones, and precision munitions at ranges up to 40 kilometers. This addresses the primary vulnerability: air defense. Previous gaps in coverage left critical infrastructure exposed to aerial threats. The $236 million modernization initiative announced in 2024 allocates $45 million annually for tactical vehicles, surveillance drones, mine-resistant vehicles, and modern defense technology. Recent acquisitions include Turkish armored personnel carriers, American UH-1 Huey helicopters, and approximately 150 M117 armored security vehicles delivered under the major non-NATO ally framework. The Kenya Navy operates as the best-equipped naval force in immediate East Africa, focused on protecting 536 kilometers of Indian Ocean coastline and counter-piracy operations. The Kenya Air Force fields transport aircraft, helicopters, and a limited number of combat jets, modest but adequate for defensive operations. According to defense analysts, the force isn't built for offensive operations or regional conquest. It's optimized for exactly one mission: defending the highlands and economic heartland against invasion while maintaining border security. Here's where defensive calculations fundamentally change. In June 2024, the United States designated the nation as a major non-NATO ally, the first sub-Saharan African country to receive this status. This isn't symbolic. This means priority access to advanced U.S. military equipment, joint training exercises, intelligence sharing, and participation in defense research programs. The British Army Training Unit Kenya, one of the UK's most important overseas facilities, has operated in the country for decades. When Western powers need a stable, reliable partner for operations in the Horn of Africa, they turn to this East African nation. The U.S. maintains Camp Simba at Manda Bay, used for counterterrorism operations across the region. Joint exercises like Justified Accord, the largest U.S.-Africa command exercise in East Africa, ensure interoperability between forces. According to Georgetown University's analysis, any significant invasion would trigger immediate international response. U.S. and U.K. intelligence assets would provide real-time battlefield surveillance. Western air power could establish air superiority within hours. Naval forces could secure the Indian Ocean coastline. The calculation for any potential aggressor becomes, are we willing to fight not just the Kenya Defense Forces, but their Western allies with overwhelming technological superiority? Since 2011, forces have been engaged in sustained combat operations in Somalia under African Union missions. This isn't ceremonial peacekeeping. This is counterinsurgency warfare against Al-Shabaab, one of Africa's most capable militant organizations. Troops have fought in Kismayo, Gedo, and Jubaland. They've survived IED attacks, complex ambushes, and asymmetric warfare tactics. They've learned lessons about urban warfare, irregular combat, and maintaining supply lines in hostile territory that most conventional armies only theorize about. According to military analysts, this operational experience creates a force that's tactically adaptive and psychologically resilient. Soldiers who've actually fought and survived combat operations, not just trained for them. Any invasion force expecting a conventional fight would face troops who know how to conduct ambushes, use terrain for defense, and fight an irregular campaign if necessary. The Somali borderlands would become a nightmare for any mechanized column attempting to advance. Here's the strategic reality. Who would actually invade? Somalia lacks the military capacity. It's a failed state. Ethiopia faces internal conflicts and has no strategic interest in confrontation. Uganda and Tanzania are regional partners. South Sudan is barely functional as a state. The only realistic scenario is a proxy conflict, insurgent groups, terrorist organizations, or cross-border raids. And for that specific threat, the defense forces are extremely well prepared after 18 years in Somalia. Large-scale conventional invasion by a regional power would trigger international intervention, face severe geographic obstacles, confront a battle-hardened military with Western equipment and training, and ultimately accomplish what? There's no strategic prize worth the cost. Could the country defend itself against invasion? Against realistic threats? Absolutely. The combination of defensive geography, Western alliances, battle-tested troops, and ongoing modernization creates a force capable of defending the economic heartland and population centers. Against a hypothetical invasion by a major regional power with overwhelming force, that's where alliances become decisive. The military doesn't need to win alone. It needs to hold long enough for international response. And with major non-NATO ally status, US intelligence support, and UK training partnerships, that response would be immediate. The 24,000 troops aren't meant to conquer neighbors. They're meant to make invasion costly enough, difficult enough, and internationally complicated enough that no rational actor attempts it. After 18 years of continuous combat operations, defensive geography that channels attackers into kill zones, and Western military partnerships that make any invasion politically impossible, this East African nation has built something more valuable than a large military. It's built a defensive strategy